Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Waller's Wallet, and in this video, we're gonna take a look at the 4% rule when it comes to retirement, and if that's something you should actually be using to calculate how much money you can spend in your retirement time. Now, if you want a simple way to help out the channel, consider hitting that thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn that bell notification on as well so you don't miss out on future videos. Now, nobody wants to run out of money in retirement. Nobody. And I know at times I've been lost in thought about if I'm saving or investing enough money and how much money my wife and I could realistically spend when we decide to retire. Because my wife and I, we do plan to retire early, ideally around the age of 45, which means we need our money to last us longer than someone who's retiring at 65. And a quick way to figure out how much money you would need in order to retire, you do have a couple of options. A common method is using the 25x rule, where you take how much you plan to live on per year, then multiply that number by 25. And this is going to give you a roundabout number of how much money you need in order to retire. Now, this could be debatable, especially if you're someone thinking of retiring early, because 25 times your annual spend may not be enough. Instead, you could use something like 30x, and that should give you enough money that you need to save to retire earlier. But while saving and investing your money is important, your withdrawal rate in that time period is also going to be very important as well. Because if you go too crazy and withdraw too much money consistently while you're in retirement, then your money just may run out too soon for you. Or that just means you need to die just a little bit earlier. Now, the 4% rule, it essentially lets you know that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio safely every year, accounting for inflation, and you shouldn't run out of money within a 30-year period. And this is a popular rule that people tend to follow. And William Bengen came up with the 4% rule to help people understand how much they could spend each year of their portfolio without going broke. And what William noticed after looking at a lot of different withdrawal rates and data of the stock market from 1929 through 1976, that withdrawing 4% in your first year and adjusting for inflation afterwards, it should last you 30 years. And even if you retired and right after you retired the market decreased, you should be okay. And even events like the Great Depression and the stagflation during the 70s, those who retired around that time still had enough money for a 30-year retirement when they followed the 4% rule. And this also includes annual increases to account for inflation, which you can calculate inflation as about a 2 to 3% increase each and every year. But his calculations had accounted for portfolios with a 50-50 split of stocks and bonds. So depending on your allocations, this may or may not be completely accurate for you. For example, someone like myself who plans to retire early, I'll have more stock holdings in my portfolio over bonds because bond returns are just too low compared to something like VTI. And an updated version of the Trinity study, which is another 4% rule study, showed the success rate by different withdrawal rates and different portfolio allocations. And in the study, if you happen to withdraw at a 3% rate, you should pretty much never run out of money. Even if you held 100% bonds, you had an 84% success rate after 30 years of not running out of money. But that might be too conservative for some people, especially if you're on a 30-year plan. And at a 4% withdrawal rate with a 75-25 split between stocks and bonds, it is pretty much solid to never run out of money over a 30-year period. But once you start going above that 4% withdrawal rate, the numbers begin to fluctuate depending on your allocations and your payout period. And in looking at this chart, if you wanted to withdraw more than 4% every year, then that 75-25 split looks to give you a good chance to last you. Because even at the 30-year mark, withdrawing 5% of your portfolio every year, there's an 82% chance that you don't run out of money. Now that does mean 1 in 5 people would run out of money in that time period. But the stock market has historically returned between 6 to 10% every year. So if you're withdrawing 4%, you have a buffer zone to account for the potential negative years and account for inflation. So if you withdraw 4% and the market returns 7%, your money's still going to continue to grow. For example, if you had a portfolio of $1.25 million and based on the 4% rule, you would be able to withdraw $50,000 in your first year. Then based on a 3% inflation rate, it would increase the following year to $51,500. And if you did have that portfolio of $1.25 million and you took out the 4% all at once at the beginning of the year, your portfolio would be reduced to $1.2 million. And if the market returned 7%, your portfolio would actually grow to $1,284,000, which is more than what you initially started with. But if the market goes down, let's say 3% in your first year of retirement, your portfolio would lose $36,000, bringing your portfolio down to $1,164,000, which is over a $100,000 difference than that 7% return we just looked at. Now, the good news is that it's only happened a few times in history to have a market decrease multiple years in a row, but that does not mean it can't happen again in the future. But again, the 4% rule is based on a 30-year period, so if you plan to follow that timeline, then this could be just fine for you. If you're someone who plans on a retirement less than 30 years, 4% could potentially be too conservative for you. And if you're someone who plans to retire early and you need to live longer on this money, 4% might actually be too aggressive. Now, while the 4% rule is a nice place to start, it makes the assumption you're going to withdraw 4% of your portfolio and account for inflation every year. Not more, not less, which may not actually be the case because expenses are fluid and they can vary. And when you reach retirement, ideally you have fewer fixed expenses and your discretionary spending is going to vary from year to year. In the 4% rule, it doesn't account for those higher spend years. Maybe you had an unexpected medical bill, or maybe you wanted to gift someone some money because of a college graduation or something else. Nor does it account for the years that you don't spend a full 4% of your portfolio. Also, the data used for these 4% calculations in these studies are historical. And while that can be a good guide in retrospect, if you look at all the fine print for anything to do with investing, past performances don't guarantee future results or performance. Because who knows if we'll ever see a never before seen huge multi-year decrease in the market or some sort of crazy inflation, because we won't know until it happens. But with everything in life, to truly be successful, you need to have some ability to adapt. And the 4% rule, it doesn't leave much for adapting, whether the market's good or bad. And being able to adjust can really go a long way. And it's okay to not spend 4% of your portfolio each and every year. If you can't or if you don't want to, you aren't required to spend that much money every single year. But by paying attention to your spending and how the market is doing, it's going to be very important. If the market's doing well, then maybe you can afford to withdraw more money the following year if you want to. But if the market's been rough for a bit of time, you might need to scale back to prevent your money from draining quicker than maybe you expected. Now, there are dynamic spending models to help you calculate your withdrawal rate based on how the market is performing in your withdrawal rate, which could give you more flexibility for a safe withdrawal rate and account for fluctuations in the market as well. And they guide you to the upper limits of withdrawal rates for when the market's good and safe withdrawal rates during years the market's not so good. And these methods do have safeguards in place to minimize the possibility of you running out of money as well, although nothing is guaranteed in any of these options. And one popular option is Vanguard's dynamic spending model, which puts a ceiling and a floor level on your withdrawal rates based on your previous withdrawal rates, your portfolio, and the market performance. And with this, you do need to run some numbers, but it's going to help you adjust your safe withdrawal limit each year rather than just having a static number. So it could be more or less than 4%. And this may or may not be the right option for you, but it's still an option to consider because that flexibility could help extend your money, especially for people who might need it longer to live on. Now, the 4% rule, it's more of a guide. And if you're someone who has saved enough money and plans for a 30-year retirement, then based on historical data, you would be okay with a 4% withdrawal rate and possibly even a 5% withdrawal rate. But if you're someone who plans to retire early, 4% might be a little bit too high, and you might be better off with a 3 or 3.5% withdrawal rate to make sure your money is going to last you as long as possible. But in either situation, being flexible and having the ability to adapt when you need to is going to be extremely important, because while we can use historical data to get information, we don't know what the market can do or will do 10, 15, or even 30 years from now. So let me know, will you be using the 4% rule when you decide to retire? Now, if you're someone looking for information on how to build a super simple 3-fund portfolio, then be sure to check out this video right here where I explain how you can do just that. And if you found this video helpful, then feel free to share it with someone who may find it helpful as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.